we are not eating food. We are eating chemicals, inflammatory chemicals. So just if you walk into your grocery store, just stay away from the middle part of it, because that's where all the addictive chemical laden foods are. The top 3 worst ingredients that everybody should get off of is the inflammatory oils, all the bad oils, the refined carbohydrates. Get off of the processed breads and cakes and cookies. And this goes for gluten-free as well. Like, get off all of that stuff. And then get off the toxic ingredients, all the chemicals that are being put not only in those foods, but in our meats. The research shows that just taking your food window and compressing it into something as simple as 10 hours of eating and 14 hours of fasting, and you can start to reverse the damage that these harmful foods have caused you over the years. What you're doing is you're taking your food and you're compressing it into a shorter eating window, allowing more time for your body to fast. And it's not calorie deficit. It is being smart when you transition into eating smart foods. When you fast 13 to 15 hours, you start to flip a metabolic switch, and you start to go from being a sugar burner to a fat burner. Most people flip this switch, and you are now burning energy, making energy from fat. So that's the first step. In this 13 to 15 hours, there's incredible research. Growth hormone goes up, that slows the aging process down. Inflammation starts to come down. Ketones start to be made that will go up and heal the brain. Once you hit about 17 hours of fasting, you start to stimulate, you turn on something called autophagy. Autophagy is where the cells will start to heal and repair themselves. It's a wisdom and intelligence inside the cells that make the cells more efficient. You had been following a Western diet for many years. You're wanting to heal your body in a more efficient way. You're going to want to start to doing some longer fasts, like 17-hour fasts. Then we go to 24 hours. Research shows that you reboot intestinal stem cells in your gut, and you can start to repair the inner lining of your gut. There's an interesting study at 36 hours, we start to burn more fat. 48 hours, we have research showing that dopamine receptor sites open up, and you can actually create new dopamine pathways. And then we have Walter Longo's 3-day water fast that showed at 72 hours, you can reboot all of your old, worn out white blood cells and create a new, stronger immune system. I'm not saying eat less. I'm saying eat less often. And take your eating window, compress it, and start to use the intelligence inside your body to be able to heal some of the damage that this modern world is creating. If you are healthy, I'll put myself in that category. Healthy 51-year-old woman. I fast all the time with the exception of right before my cycle, and I'll explain how we look at this for women. I'm doing it for better mental health. I'm doing it for mitochondrial health so I can keep my cells clean and energized. I'm doing it for cancer prevention. I vary my fasts. I don't fast the same way every day, and I don't fast every day. There's a couple of detrimental sides, and that's where people do the same style of fast over and over and over again. The second area that fasting can be detrimental is for women right before their cycle. We're trying to make progesterone then, and progesterone's very susceptible to spikes in cortisol. And cortisol, fasting's like exercise. It can create an increase in cortisol, which ultimately can cause a woman to start to bring her progesterone levels down. That can make her miss cycles. So there are people who have extreme adrenal fatigue. They've got to fast differently. Diabetics, amazing for diabetics, but we got to go slow and methodical about it. Let's start with women who have a normal cycle. If you have a normal cycle, the first part of your cycle, like day 1 until you ovulate, so that would be about day 10, day 11, your body is trying to make a hormone called estrogen. And you will be very efficient at making estrogen, specifically the protective estrogens, by keeping yourself insulin sensitive. So the longer fast, carnivore diet, getting yourself in ketosis in that first part of your cycle from day 1 to day 10 is imperative. That is when women should be leaning into the longer fast if she chooses to do that. Then when we hit ovulation, which is about this short little 4-day window from like day 11 to day 15, you've got all your hormones at their max. So you've got estrogen at its highest, you've got testosterone, progesterone comes in a little bit then, but not a ton. So I actually encourage women to go stick closer to like a 15-hour fast at that point. Women need to be able to have a healthy gut to break down estrogen. So a carnivore diet would be phenomenal there. Get an upregulation of T regulatory cells so that you have like a calm, efficient immune system. Great during that time. With perimenopausal women, you get these like 60-day periods, 90-day periods where you have no idea if your period is coming or going. With that person, she's going to need to know her progesterone levels and how to click in when her body is wanting progesterone. And it's actually not that hard for a perimenopausal woman. If she starts spotting and there's no official start to her period, that right there is a sign her body needs more progesterone. She needs to step out of fasting and she needs to lean into the foods that I talked about. If all of a sudden her anxiety goes through the roof and she can't sleep, that would be another sign. Hey, your body's trying to make progesterone. Let's stop the fasting. Then the last one is the postmenopausal woman. She really needs to just make sure 1 to 2 days a week she's not fasting because she still needs to make progesterone. She's not getting as much of it as she did at 35. So 1 to 2 days a week, step out of fasting, step out of ketosis so your body has enough resources to make progesterone.
Question, what about an 18-day cycle?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is you want to track your cycle. So I use a Clue app so that you kind of see where your ovulation window would be. And Clue app, if you track it for a couple of months, then it'll take your 18-day cycle and it will start to show you the ovulation period. And the real trick for somebody with an 18-day cycle, if we're going to keep it as simple as possible, is I would encourage you to not fast the 7 days before. So day 11, you would stop fasting. And once you start your cycle, I would actually encourage you to fast even longer than a typical intermittent fasting. I would encourage you to try a 24-hour fast. Try a 36-hour fast. Really, you can use that front end of your cycle, especially that first week, to get yourself more insulin sensitive. If it's an environmental reason that your cycle is shorter, fasting is actually going to bring you more towards a 28-day cycle. There are cells in 2 parts of our body that respond incredibly well to autophagy. And I want you to think of autophagy as you're just cleaning these cells up, making them more efficient. So the 2 parts of the body are the brain and the ovaries. The ovaries, on the outside of the ovaries, have something called thecal cells. And these are the cells that are making you hormones.
Theca cells, endocrine cells associated with ovarian follicles. They play an essential role in fertility by producing androgen substrate required for ovarian estrogen biosynthesis.
So if you had a hysterectomy where they pulled the uterus out, but they left the ovaries, that is awesome. And I would encourage you to make sure, and obviously you don't have a cycle anymore, but I would make sure if we took you on a weekly basis that at 4 to 5 days out of the week, I would have you fast 17 hours or more. So we're getting more autophagy in there. And then 2 days a week, I would step out of fasting and I would do more of the progesterone building foods that I talked about. And I would do that on a weekly basis. And you might find that your hormone production improves greatly. We've seen in our community, I've seen people with full hysterectomies that were told they would go into full menopause within 3 months of the hysterectomy. And 3 years later, they're still making sex hormones and they don't have ovaries, but the tissue's still there. The adrenals will make sex hormones. So if fasting in that scenario can be an incredible tool to balance hormones. Here's how we look at fasting. When you want to heal your body, fasting is a go-to strategy, but it has to be paired with healthy eating. So when we go into autophagy, 17 hours of fasting and longer, what we're doing, autophagy is in opposition of a cellular mechanism called mTOR. mTOR will build cells up and make them healthy. They will build muscle. On the other end of that spectrum is autophagy. Autophagy will break down and heal, so it can break muscle down, but it's temporary. It is not the whole picture. So if you want to build lean, strong muscle, the absolute best way to do this is to go 17 hours of fasting on a regular basis and then break your fast with protein and protein only. If you break your fast with protein, what you're now doing is you're saying to your cells, okay, we've stimulated autophagy, we've cleaned ourselves up. Now let's build ourselves strong. And let's go and add protein in to stimulate mTOR so we can build muscle up. Now, the next hack on this that's amazing is, why don't you fast on a regular basis, 17 hours, do a strength training workout in a fasted state, so you're breaking muscle down even more, and then have a big meat meal afterwards. Break that, like literally leave your workout and then go and eat a bunch of meat. And now that is the greatest way to build muscle. So when people say it breaks down muscle, it's like, yes, in the fasted state temporarily, but if we start adding in more protein and we break our fast with protein, now you're building muscle better than you ever built it before. If you take a bunch of people in a fasted state and you go, well, they broke muscle down and they lost muscle. Yeah, of course. That's, your body's going to find glucose wherever it is. It's going to go after it in the muscle. It's going to go after it in your fat. It's going to go after it in your liver. And so it's going to break that down. Now, what are we doing after the fast? So the first thing that most people don't realize is you're stimulating autophagy every night when you go to sleep. So when you sleep, your brain actually goes into a repair mode. This is why sleep is so important. So make sure you're prioritizing sleep, make sure you're getting enough sleep, because that's going to be a great way to stimulate autophagy. Then we throw in the 17-hour fast. And they say autophagy and fasting happens somewhere between 17 and 72 hours. So when people really want a deep cellular cleaning, that's part of why they go into those 72 hours fast. We've got HIIT training, where you're getting your heart rate up and down. That can stimulate autophagy. We have things like red light therapy. Some biohacks like red light can stimulate autophagy. We've seen some, herbs that like bergamot that can stimulate autophagy. So it's not, you start stacking those things together. What I'm finding in my community is that a lot of people, as they're starting to go, oh, like, I've been doing this all wrong. I've been eating wrong. I've been eating the wrong foods. I've been living wrong. And they start to wake up. Then what do they need to do to repair themselves? And the more we can start to stack autophagy habits and combine them, the quicker somebody is going to heal. I believe that the first step that all humans on the planet right now need to take is, let's just stop eating all day. Like, stop eating before you go to bed, stop eating when you wake up. Doesn't matter what you're eating. We have to start to compress this eating window. Okay, so the research shows 10-hour eating window can overturn the metabolic syndrome type damage that's happening from food. So now we take this 10-hour eating window and we go, okay, well, where do I put it in my day? The 2 hours before you go to bed, your body is making the most melatonin. And the 2 hours when you get up, your body is still making melatonin. Now, why this is important is because as melatonin goes up, your body becomes more insulin resistant. So if I eat dinner when it's dark, if it's 6 o'clock at night and I see the sun setting, that red light stimulates to my body, I need to make melatonin. So as the sun is setting, as we move into darkness, your body is making melatonin. So we really ideally should be done eating by then. Same thing when we wake up in the morning. We shouldn't necessarily grab the cup of coffee, even if it's a bulletproof style coffee. We shouldn't be eating, breakfast first thing in the first couple of hours in the morning, because the body, once it sees the sunlight and it sees that it's day, it shuts down melatonin production and it starts to stimulate cortisol. Your cortisol production will peak about 2 hours after you wake up. So I call these bookends. These are the times, 2 hours before you go to bed, 2 hours when you wake up. Let's not eat then. So now we can look at the eating window being more in the middle of the day. If you go back and you think we're so primally designed in the wintertime, our bodies are meant to be more in ketosis. We're meant to go into more of a hibernation place where we are not needing as much food. Because that's what the primal people did. They didn't have food access, so they relied on their ketogenic energy system to get them through the winter. So, but in the summer, we have these longer days, but also we're given more, nature provides us more food. There was more daylight hours for the cave people to go make a kill. So yeah, as it gets darker, this is where it gets a little more challenging. We really like lunch should be our big meal. And then as we move towards the darkness, we got to think about not eating. Came out of the New England Journal of Medicine, December 2019. And they looked at over 1,500 peer-reviewed journals, and they decided that intermittent fasting was the absolute best way. They even went on to say it should be the first way for these conditions, for obesity, diabetes, neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's and dementia. Some cancers, not all cancers, primarily the hormonal cancer and colon cancers, MS, and pre and post surgery, cardiovascular health too. Not difficult to do. You just got to train your body how to do it. You're going to really want to lean into nutrient dense food. And when you eat, you want to eat. This is why when people say calorie restriction, so especially in women and fasting, there's a lot of discussion around the fact that it's too much calorie restriction. But it's not calorie restriction. It's time restricted eating. So when you eat, you're going to need to eat, and you're going to need to eat good quality food. This is why I love pairing something like the carnivore diet with fasting, because you're getting such nutrient dense food in that eating window. Now, beyond that, what I hear from a lot of people is, well, I'm not hungry. And this is probably the biggest challenge, because when we move over into this ketogenic energy system, ketones turn off hunger. So you are going to need to learn in your eating window how to eat the right foods, regardless of if you're hungry or not. And again, this is why meat is a great thing to pair with your fasting. Beyond that, we might have to look at some things like supplementation. So we live in the most mineral depleted time we have ever seen humans have. Our food is not being grown in soils that are rich in minerals. We've got so many chemicals in our environment that are blocking mineral receptor sites in cells. So you might have to add in a mineral supplement. Most of our fasters in my community do. So you might have to supplement a little bit more to get those extra nutrients, but you got to train yourself to eat in that window. And the more nutrient dense, the easier it will be for you.